Guys, we're live. All right. Thank you for coming tonight, watching the show. If you're watching it on the replay, I appreciate it. Let's get some quick business out of the way. Hit that subscribe button if you can. Hit the like button. Make a comment, share. And if you're live, you guys can comment all you want. We're going to talk about our favorite football memories, our favorite football games tonight. And I invite you guys to put them down in the comments, and we will read them live tonight. I know we each have some, and okay. Oh, let me introduce you to. You got South Bend Hawkeye on the bottom up there, and you got JD Jerry up next to me. To my right, he has a podcast with a friend named Keith, and they have a podcast called "Punting is Winning." Check that out. It's really fun, and they did some fun stuff. And we're actually, with his permission, we're kind of borrowing his stuff from that podcast today.
It's all good.
It's all good. I appreciate that. I did ask you first, so
yeah.
All right. Let's get started. Jerry, do you want to go ahead? 'Cause I know what your list consisted of. If you want, unless you changed it up a little bit and added an all era.
Well, I didn't really add anything extra. There's some games. I mean, what I did with our podcast last week, we just did the top 10 games of the Kirk Ferentz era. But I know, Dean, you wanted to go all time. The only run, I mean, there's several in the Fry era that you could throw on there pretty easily. But the one I want to go back to that probably not going to get a lot of play is the 7-6 win over Notre Dame in 1939. That's what propelled Iowa to a really fantastic season, and ultimately Niall Kennet getting the Heisman. And Iowa went 6-1-1 that year. And oddly, the year before, they were 1-6-1. So having them on there and beating the highly touted Notre Dame that year, beating them 7-6 was it propelled Iowa to a really great season that year.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, all righty. South Bend, you want to throw in your games?
Okay, well, I mean, are we just going like one at a time going around?
You can do whatever. You can give me all, or you can just give me one or two, and then I'll move on to mine, and we'll go back to Jerry.
So I'm going to start out with my honorable mention first, and even though it's a loss, it still was a game that I will go back and watch on YouTube because it was very enjoyable, and that is the 2017 Iowa playing Penn State at home when we got beat on the fourth down with, I believe, 7 seconds to go at the 1. That game with Saquon Barkley and Akram Wadley, whether you like Akram or not, was quite a show, and especially being Stanley's freshman, or wait, was it his freshman or sophomore year? Sophomore year, I believe. We lost, but man, what a game. Just really enjoyed that one. That's got great memories. Number 5 for me, I will go back to 2002, and it is the Iowa at Penn State, I believe the double overtime, 42-35. And we gave up a lead, but that was kind of the statement game for us, I feel, that let everybody know Iowa's actually a contender. Like,
was that the 2002 game? Did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I remember that game. I wasn't watching it on TV. I don't even remember if it was on TV, but I had it on the radio doing my yard work.
Yeah, I believe we were up at one point like 21 points. And then I was working at a golf course at the time. I had to go, but obviously, if you're from Iowa, turn it on to 600 a.m. And I listened to it out there, and I just couldn't believe it. Then I got to the golf course. They had it on the TV, and it's like, oh, my God, are we seriously going to choke this one away? But we prevailed. I mean, really wish that Kirk would kind of look at what made that team click that year and recruit that, a.k.a. the quarterback situation.
Yeah. Well, it's because we had a dual threat quarterback that year.
Exactly. Oddly, that's one of the ones I did on my list was that 2002 Penn State game.
So I watched your podcast. I have a feeling I think a lot of mine are, I mean, of your 10, you pretty much covered a majority of mine, I think, but like 2. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Dean, you're up.
All right. Well, I'll mention a couple of honorable mention ones I have here first. one of my favorite games, and this was another one I didn't get to watch on TV, and I don't remember why, but I remember where I was listening to it on the radio on 10:40 a.m. Minnesota. I can't remember the year. It was either 2002, 3, 4, or 5, but we clinched the Big Ten that year, and that was the game we took the goalposts down and tried to take them home with us.
It was 02.
It was 02.
02?
I was actually at the stadium. I was there. I saw everything as it unfolded. Yeah.
So,
it was not a good idea to take that down through there. And everything's revolving door where they tried to take it. You know, you're not going to get that through a revolving door. It's just
no.
So I have told Dean this story, but we jumped down as well. I was up there with, I think it was about 7 or 8 of us, and we were on the field so fast, I actually was able to see Floyd and put Floyd in a headlock while it was on this table, and all these media reporters were there like taking pictures. The next day I bought every newspaper I could and never could find myself in any newspapers. I was like, what the heck?
Were you still there when they turned on the really loud
Yes.
beeping side? Oh my, that was.
Yes. I mean, they were
trying to get us out of there.
So the other funny thing is too, is if I remember right, at like the south and the north side of that for the entrance, they actually had doors where you could open them up like normal, but the suction just it flung you through. And obviously the people carrying the goalpost did not know that, but still, always a good memory.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I kind of lumped these together. 3 out of the last 4 years, we finally getting that monkey off our back and beating Wisconsin. And so it's just like anytime we can beat Wisconsin, I'm just tickled pink because, as you guys know, Wisconsin was getting to the point like Ohio State where we couldn't beat them. And so
are you
got
saying,
it 3 out of the last 4 years, and I'm tickled pink.
Okay, so you're talking the last 4 years then, the 3 out of the 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one too that, like you said, South Bend. I have one that's a loss, and it's one of the ones that, just because it was a fantastic game, and that's the championship game in 2015 with Michigan State. And, we talked about this on a podcast, and how many fourth downs did Michigan State get on that last drive to score the winning touchdown? I mean, it must have been
more
like
than
4.
So,
and we couldn't stop them on all 4 of them. And it was just.
Yeah.
I was still pretty hammered during that game. We were there. And all I can remember is it was the loudest I can remember. I mean, the moment that pass hit his fingertips and he hauled that in at the start of the fourth quarter, I mean, every Iowa fan, I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah, it was a lot of
that drive was so long.
Yeah.
That
we've talked about this.
I was leaving Marshalltown. As we caught that pass for a touchdown. And then I think, and I might be mistaken, but I thought Michigan State, when they got the ball, we never got it back until the last seconds of the game.
I think we had over a minute, but don't quote me on that. I want to say it was like a minute and 6 seconds. Maybe not.
Okay.
But
so anyway,
go ahead.
I was just wanting to go finish this story real quick. As we were leaving Marshalltown, I lived 45 minutes away in Hubbard. That game was still not over. That drive was still going on when we got home. And I jumped out of the car, ran in my house, and ran up and turned the TV on so I could just watch us lose that game.
That was a heartbreaker.
I still say to this day, I know we didn't do anything in the Rose Bowl, obviously, but had we won that, we would have been paired up against Alabama. And I still wonder, the way Ferentz plays, Saban also played like that. He just has more talent. And I still think that Iowa would have competed with Alabama a lot better than Michigan State competed. But it's one of those we're never going to know. So just fun to think about it, though.
Just like the 2002 Iowa-Ohio State, what could have been.
And I've told Dean this before. I still think to this day, USC was the best team in the country at the end of that year. We got beat by a team that would have, I think, pretty much just dominated Ohio State and their lack of a quarterback and Craig Krenzel. Right. And then Miami's studs. I mean, there was too much ego on that team. USC just would have smoked them too. So It is what it is.
Now, if I remember right, on that Ohio State team that year, didn't they had to just kind of like make a 4th down and like 13 against Purdue to extend a drive so that they could go down and win a game? They were that close to losing.
They definitely had that national championship where they had the game they needed to win, and it was tight, and they got it done. That was that one for them. I mean, usually every national champion has a game where
they do.
They were really good, they were struggling and really needed to pull out, and that was Ohio State's. Yeah.
Okay. Jerry, you going to share some of your other games?
Oh, I've got. Well, everybody knows the Ohio State game when we blew them out in 2017. That's one of them. Wisconsin 30-7 in Iowa City, and won a share of the Big Ten. And I think it was 2004. Yeah, 2004. We had just won it because I think Michigan had beaten Ohio State. So Iowa had the opportunity, had won, tied the championship for the championship. And that was before, obviously, the championship games. But 2004, that Wisconsin game, when Wisconsin came in, they were number 9 in the nation, and Iowa beat them 30-7. And I sat around after
running back that year.
This was after Ron Dane, right?
It would have been after Dane. Was it Melvin Gordon?
I thought Melvin Gordon came in just a little later than that.
Okay.
I thought Gordon was in like 2006, 7, and 8, or.
Well, let's be honest. They've had such a plethora of great running backs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good running backs. But I just stood up there after the game was over. I was probably one of the last 50 people out. I told this story on the other podcast, and I just soaked it in. It was last game of the season for home games, and I just stood up there and just kind of like, I was so serene and calm.
I think Calvin might have it right. I think it's Monte Ball.
Could be Monte Ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I have another honorable mention. 1977, going all the way back to the Bob Cummings era. Okay. You guys are probably both a little younger than remember that.
I was 10.
Okay. I was 2 years out of high school. And I just remember that Iowa State game. And that tells you how old I am, guys. I just remember that was the big talk of the state. Who do you want to win? Who do you want to win? Because that was the first meeting in how many years? Several million years?
35.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess the legislature had to get together to make that happen. Anyhow, Iowa beat a ranked Iowa State team. And I think the final score was 12-10. We had 2 touchdowns with a missed extra point and a missed 2-point conversion.
Was that Dennis Mosley game? Did he run wild on Iowa State? Was that Dennis Mosley?
Yes, he did. He did. And he scored the first touchdown for Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Iowa State had scored, I think, on a punt return or first play from scrimmage right off the bat, made it 7-0, and then we came right back with Dennis Mosley, who it looked to me like when I watched the replay, 60, 70 yards on that run. And so, yeah, I've forgotten all about him, People don't talk about him, but, that's back in the 70s where I think most people here are probably more Hayden Fry and definitely Kirk Ferentz era people that watch this show.
Yeah.
I think Calvin can probably remember Bob Cummings. He's old enough. I
really gravitated towards Iowa football when it was Matt Rogers, Nick Bell, who was one of my favorite players, and then was Tony Stewart, Hanks. Oh God, who was a couple more on there? But that's like when I started to pay attention at the games instead of just jacking around in the stands.
Yeah. I have sitting behind me Nick Bell's actual helmet that he wore for practices, signed by Nick Bell.
He was a great, and he was a fullback. A lot of people don't know he was a fullback, not a running back.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fullback, but he could just pound that ball, man. He had a pretty good NFL. I think he played 3-4 years in the NFL for the Raiders, I think.
Yeah, he did. He played for the Raiders. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you know too that Nick Bell leads the all-time for receptions in a game for Iowa?
Really? No, I did not know that.
He caught 13 passes in a game. We actually did this as a question of the week for our podcast.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about that.
I would
anyway,
never
I'm
guess.
not going to look it up. I'm going to take your word for it, but I have it right here.
It was 13 catches in a game. I don't remember who it was against, maybe Indiana or somebody like that.
I pray every game that maybe we can break that record and actually have 13 completed passes in a game.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, we could go back and kind of talk about. It was Indiana. Calvin said. So we could go back and talk about. I want to tell a little story, because we're talking about football memories from the time I was a little kid. My dad had graduated. I grew up in Iowa City. My dad had graduated from the University of Iowa, went into broadcasting, and worked at the station in Iowa City. I can't remember its call letters. I want to say KXIC at the time, radio station there. And but every Saturday from the time I could remember all the way up through high school, if there wasn't a game on TV, we had it on the radio in every house in our room. And I believe I thought at the time it might be Zabel, but we lived up in Waterloo at that point, and we probably were pulling in Cedar Rapids. Brooks from Cedar Rapids, maybe. Yeah. And so, but that was my first introduction to Hawkeye football. And, but I always paid attention to the games when my dad was watching, because he was a bigger fan and diehard fan than I was. And it's just crazy. And so, but this next game I want to give to you guys is kind of emotional for me, because my dad died in 1981 before the season ended in football. And, so the Michigan State win that got us to the Rose Bowl was also our first winning season, God knows how long, 20 plus years. I was actually at work, so I had to listen to the game on the radio. And so I get in my car driving home, hoping I can get home before the game is over, because I only lived 2 miles from where I was working. But I didn't. The game got over, and Zabel going on the radio going, "I was in the Rose Bowl. I was in the Rose Bowl. I was in the Rose Bowl." You know how he said that so many times. Mm-hmm. And tears started coming down to my eyes, because I remembered my dad wanted this moment so bad that, he didn't get a chance to see it because he didn't live long enough to see it. Yeah. And so that's why I put that game as my top game. I just kind of jumped up there because it seemed like a good time to put it up there.
Yeah, it's funny that sometimes the games that you remember, and you just remember where you were when they occurred. Mm-hmm. And that game, I remember, I grew up on a farm in southern Iowa, and I remember I was out. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter, and Dad says, "You got to get out and get those cattle taken care of." I was 13, but I took control of the situation, and it was probably my turn anyway. And so I was out in the lot feeding cattle, and then I went back in, and the game had just ended, and he had told me Iowa won and they're in the Rose Bowl, and I was so excited and happy. But I didn't get to see, or at that point we didn't get to see it. We were listening to it, and I didn't have a radio to carry with me anymore. So but it was just, things you remember.
Oh yeah. I have a story about Iowa's last Final Four. How I found out that we were in the Final Four.
No, 1980.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you real quick that it's just, as long as we're doing memories. My wife and I were getting married that year. And so we were Catholic. So she wasn't, but I was. But Catholics, you still had to go to this pre-marriage counseling thing. You had to spend all day Saturday. And I got, of all the Saturdays to spend there, when I'd rather be home watching Iowa play basketball. We weren't allowed to have radio, so nobody knew what was going on. And so finally the priest gets up in front of us at some point toward the end, and he goes, "By the way, Iowa's in the Final Four. They beat Georgetown." We're going, just a big cheer. Nobody paid attention to what was going on the rest of that the time. All we could think about was Iowa going to the Final Four.
Yeah, it's a good team.
Yeah. And they didn't have many players on that team. Just think what would have happened if Ronnie Lester hadn't got hurt.
Yeah. I think Iowa had the best team in the nation that year.
There was an article posted up about what was it? When Iowa lost to UNLV, had the big lead and then collapsed. What was that, in 88?
I believe it was 87 or 88. Yeah, it may have been 88.
And they just talked about how good that Iowa team was, and had they just gotten past that game, maybe we wouldn't be talking about their last trip to the Final Four. Maybe we wouldn't be talking about our last championship. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You guys want to share anything else? Any other games you guys got on your list you want to talk about?
All right.
Well,
I got a few more, but I want to listen to you guys.
We got to talk about Tate to Holloway, right? The Capital One Bowl, LSU game.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that's a good game. I mean, that's got to be high on everybody's list.
Yeah. I was watching that on TV, and as soon as that happened, I jumped up and I'm yelling, I can't believe what I just saw. My wife's going, what? I go, I don't know, but I got to turn on Dolphin and Eddie real quick, and I want to hear what they have to say. And they were on delay, so that they were just saying it. And I go, oh, my God, Dolphin, I said the exact same thing.
Yeah, that was a good game.
That was a fun game when you thought for sure that we were going to end in a loss on that last play.
Right.
Well, that was also, too, the official start for one of the biggest busts, they say, in the NFL, Jamarcus Russell. And if you recall, 2 years later, two players in that game that played against each other, Robert Gallery and Jamarcus Russell, didn't they go in the draft as well? Robert, number 2 to the Raiders, and Jamarcus to the Raiders as well. Did they have the first 2 picks? Or am I wrong on that?
I think, didn't Gallery go the year before?
Did he go in 03 and then Jamarcus went in 04?
I think so. Or 04.
Or maybe
so it would have been
maybe it was like 02.
05 draft, maybe.
Yeah.
Jamarcus.
Yeah, because Gallery stayed. What was he? Was he a sophomore in 02 when Iowa had their magical run?
I think
he
was
just a sophomore.
I think he was. I'd have to look that up. Maybe Kellen can figure that one out for us.
But that was
a good history book for us.
So sadly, that actually did not make my top 5. But I think it's because maybe it's just a default. I mean, that's if you talk to an Iowa fan, whether you really follow them or you don't follow them, but you really, you cheer them on, like of that game. And I've seen the replay so many times. Like, it used to give me goosebumps. I remember one time sitting in a Shields, the one in Iowa City, and it was like 3 years after the fact, and they were redoing the game on their TV in there. And I shit you not, there were people gathered around the TV as it got up, knowing what play was coming. But I mean, it still got people
anytime
excited.
You can beat Saban too, though.
Oh yeah, especially them coming off a national championship the year before that.
That's icing on the cake right there.
Yeah, I think I've never looked that up. I wonder what Ferentz's record was against him.
Well, he beat him at Michigan State and then at LSU, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but I'd have to look that up.
Yeah.
So I've got for my number 4. Just the classic 2017 Iowa versus Ohio State. I mean, if there was one play that I take from that whole game that I'll just never forget is Josh Jackson jumping up at the 3-yard line, falling backwards, one hand in the air, and just rips that pass down. I mean, it was like, my God, we actually have somebody with that kind of talent on this team. We didn't even know it, like, until now. He was just – that's the one that stands out in my mind.
Yeah,
didn't he play behind Desmond King for a couple seasons first? Or am I wrong?
No, because King wasn't Desmond 09?
I thought he was later, but maybe not. All these when you get to be this old, everything runs together, and it seems like
it does. Every season runs together.
You think it's 5 years ago, and it's 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got that game, and then the 2016 Iowa upsetting Michigan. Jim Harbaugh's first trip back to Kinnick since he got beat in 85. All that playing into it, and we had gotten, I'm pretty sure, weren't we just annihilated the week before at Penn State?
Yes.
I mean, I can remember being the pessimistic person that I am, saying, is there even a point to watch this? Because, my God, is Michigan going to roll up? Are they going to hang half 100 on us by halftime? But to watch that and to see, like, the resiliency of how that team came back, I mean, that was special.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I also, we already mentioned the Woodshed game. I don't know if either one of you mentioned the USC win in the Holiday Bowl, but that was a special win, I thought.
Yeah, on my podcast, I have that as an honorable mention.
Okay.
So
I think that was Iowa's last win against a season-ending top 25 ranked team, too.
Most likely.
Yeah. You mean since then we haven't beat a top 25 team?
A season-ending top 25 team.
Oh, season-ending.
If you take 21, Iowa State, Indiana, and Penn State all finished. I believe every one of them, maybe not Iowa State, but I thought they finished under 500.
I don't think any of them finished in the top 25 of those three.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, we just ruined Indiana's season that year.
I'll take it a step further. I don't think Indiana won a game that year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you might be right. I think we took the air out of their sail. They came in ready to go, thinking they were going to have another great season, and guess what? Iowa sent them packing.
Yeah,
that was yeah.
I think we did the same thing to Iowa State too, because Iowa State was supposed to have a great season. They were ranked ahead of us, I believe, when we played them, and we took the win out of their sail too.
Yeah. And then Penn State, I mean, I know we took that quarterback out, but it's kind of what my criticism about Ferentz. I'll say the same thing about Franklin. You're a highly paid coach, and the best backup you have, that's all the talent they had. You know, they blamed it on their backup quarterback coming in not being prepared, but it's like, dude, you're a blue blood of college football. How do you not have a backup ready to go? Like,
exactly.
You know, and then pulling those fake injuries to get breaks. And if people have never talked about it, but if you watch the end of that game too, when they go to do the interview, he pipes right into it. Was like he was building his excuse and his rebuttal after they started doing that. I mean, that's why I call him James Crying Franklin, because every loss is always a crying scene.
Yeah.
Remember, get ready for his resignation at the end of the year, because remember, he told his fans if he didn't get them to the playoffs this year, he was done.
Going to be a tough one, but I think they might be able to make the playoffs.
They could.
I think they get like what? No Michigan, no Ohio State. They got a pretty easy schedule. Not Nebraska easy, but they got a pretty easy schedule, I think.
I know they play Oregon, so that won't be easy.
Yeah.
Because Oregon, I think, travels out there.
And I can't remember. They just announced their whiteout game. I would assume that would be it. I mean,
probably.
Kind of,
I think they go out there like early November, and I think that's the latest that any of the West Coast teams actually travel east.
Yeah.
Well, and the Big Ten, have they lifted that whole deal about no night games after October 31st? I think that's been lifted, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah, and I think it's because of the West Coast teams, because they don't their weather's a little better.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So I've got Penn State at 9-3 this year, with losses to West Virginia, USC, and Ohio State. I don't think that gets them into the playoffs.
I can definitely see West Virginia, a backyard game like that. And those West Virginia fans, I know a couple of them. That's a rowdy bunch. They'll be ready.
Yeah.
And hey, let's be honest. There might be some other things working in that favor of West Virginia. If a bunch of people don't want Franklin there, who knows if they may just not try as hard some of those games.
Oh, yeah.
Penn State's one of the few teams that actually brings back their quarterback out of the Big Ten.
The what? Now say that again. I must have missed something.
Penn State is one of the few teams that actually brings back a quarterback from the year before. Because if you think
and
about
so-
all the ones that aren't, Michigan's not, Ohio State's not, Iowa's not because of getting McNamara getting hurt. I don't really count that. Nebraska doesn't. Illinois doesn't. Minnesota doesn't. Rutgers doesn't.
Northwestern because we got theirs.
Northwestern doesn't.
Yeah, right.
Wait, do they?
No, well, so they had two quarterbacks, Brennan Sullivan and then another guy. Well, the other guy got hurt. Brennan Sullivan stepped in, finished the season for him. That other guy might come back. So it's kind of like a McNamara situation.
Okay.
But no, I think USC, I mean, I would assume they're having to travel out there, Dean.
Yeah, they're traveling to USC. That's why I gave them the loss.
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it. I mean, what's one thing that Franklin's not good at? Winning big games with a lot of hype.
Yeah.
So
I think they'll be good, though. I think they'll have a good defense. And I think that their offense will be decent. I give a puncher's chance against anybody in the Big Ten. I do. I think they're better than we think they are.
But
you're right.
Penn State or USC?
Penn State.
Okay.
I'm not a big Franklin fan either. I really can't stand the guy. And him and PJ Fleck are probably my two that I could give a crap less about.
Yeah.
But
I
got to give them respect. I think they're got a good squad.
Who does?
I think Penn State's got a good squad.
Who is their quarterback again?
Aller. Drew Aller.
And he did look pretty stellar against us. I mean,
he had a good year, and he was just a freshman.
Yeah.
So you think he's going to take a step forward in his sophomore year. Although I've seen sophomores that have gone downhill too. So there's always that.
Do you guys think it's kind of odd? And I understand that Ohio State's loaded. Kind of odd that they're getting so much hype to be like, I mean, pretty much like the national champions when they're breaking in a brand new quarterback. They've lost their receivers. Now I know that they got Chip Kelly, so they're basically having to learn a new offense, I would assume.
I don't know.
I know the definition of just good teams, they don't rebuild, they just reload.
Well,
but still, it seems like there's a lot of moving factors that are going to go in.
They are
have it to go.
They are certainly loaded from talent level. There's no question about it. They have always had a recruiting top of the recruiting rankings almost every year. So from a standpoint of talent, yes. Now, can you take that talent and turn them into a team? Can you have them learn the schemes? Are they individual players? Do they play as a team? Those are some of the things that you got to look at when you look at a season of potentially going undefeated or even working toward a national championship. They're going to stub their toe somewhere along the line. I just don't think they're going to go undefeated. I don't think anybody is.
The other thing too, a lot of people don't take into consideration is with the business of this moving this NIL, you're going to start getting kids that are going to have egos.
Oh yeah.
And they may not like the other receiver that they have better stats than, but say he got 1.5 mil to play, and the guy that's got better stats got 300,000. I mean, you're going to start getting some of that NFL problems drop back, and that that can tear teams up, especially young kids like that have never seen money like this.
Right.
Yeah. So Kelvin says that Aller is in the third year, same class as Wampa.
He's in his third year, but he's second year starting.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I didn't say that right.
Yeah. Hey, the final game I happen to have on my list is the Michigan win in 1985, the field goal to win the game. Again, I was working that Saturday, so I didn't get to watch it. Heard it but we had it on the radio at the store. And when they went to kick the field goal, we couldn't tell if we missed it or made it because there was so much screaming on the radio that we had to actually turn the radio off because our customers were getting their ears pierced.
So
I like that.
I was only 3 years old, so obviously I do not remember the game, but I love watching the Big Ten, the BTNs, when they do the story on it. And I really like how that Rob Outland was so cocky. Like, you needed that. But when he said that when they called the timeout to ice him, and he said he looks over at Michigan's coach and just is like, nah, this isn't going to affect me. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think it was Scott Halverson during that same episode, because I think it was that Chuck had Long had won and was runner up to Bo Jackson that year, and they went to the senior thing to for their football when they still were doing that kind of stuff. And Halverson looked at Chuck and said, "Bo really deserved to win that. You know that."
We had a pretty good career.
He did.
I'm gonna ask you guys a kind of offbeat question on that game. Dean, I understand you didn't get to watch it, so maybe you'll be able to know this one. But my dad was never a fan of Brent Munzberger. Just always kind of said he was just kind of a scumbag, slime bag. And there's a lot of Iowa fans, no. Brent's always. I had always heard that if you listen to that game when Iowa kicked that field goal, it was almost like you knocked the wind out of Munzberger. It was kind of just like, and the kick's up and Iowa wins. Like no excitement, no nothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard that or not, but
no, that is true. Actually, my brother had brought that up on the podcast, and he said, "Yeah, it's just like Brent Musburger said, yeah, and Iowa wins." And there was no excitement. And
maybe it was your podcast, where I also got that from. Because, like I said, I've never gone back to actually watch the game because I figured I just kind of got my stuff. But it seemed like the refs, the way it sounds, though, calling Halverson's touchdown and no touchdown, they were doing everything they could to manufacture Michigan to, head out of there, getting that number one ranking back.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a major screw up on the referee's part because and I realized it didn't have replay back then, but you could clearly tell he was in. So you only need 1 foot in. So
that when they talk about that, the referees trying to tell the Iowa fans at a home game that you got to be quiet, quiet down, so Jim can get this, his cadence out. It's like, I mean,
yeah, that was a kind of a poorly thought out rule, and it didn't last long.
No.
You guys want to know the kind of football schedule we had back in the day? This is 1974, Bob Cummings' first year. And keep in mind, this was before Penn State joined the Big Ten. We started out with Michigan, UCLA, Penn State, and USC first 4 games of the season. The only game we won was UCLA in that stretch.
I'm surprised they won against UCLA, to be honest.
I know.
Because there was some pretty thin, some pretty not great teams there. I want to be nice. Those teams were not very good.
No, all those teams were pretty bad. Some of them had 1-win seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But
Dean, with Iowa's lack of a non-conference schedule.
What's that?
You really want to get me started on Iowa's lack of a non-conference schedule?
I know we won't go there. I know your feelings on that. You can bring it up if you want to.
I remember one year Iowa played Drake.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was at that game.
You was at that game?
I was at that game.
I mean, it's.
I think it ended up 52-0.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah, and hey, let's be honest. I don't care if there's one game in the non-conference like that. I mean, do you remember when didn't we used to play 4 non-conference games?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I was at the Iowa-Arizona game down in Tucson. Was that 2010?
Oof. That was not a good game for Iowa.
No, we came back and we made it a game, but that's the one where I think Iowa had an awful storm in parts of it, and it had the game couldn't be aired on TV, and then it came back on, and Iowa was already just getting smoked by Arizona. But yeah, that was a run at it. I mean, but heck, look at that Arizona team, the players that came off that, Gronkowski and their quarterback at the time.
We only lost that game by a touchdown.
That's what I mean. We were in it, but not really. It just.
Yeah, it was. They came back late.
Yeah. And I mean, it was quite an environment down there. I mean, it was definitely, but we got them back when they had to come to Iowa. Dean, I wanted to give you my last 2 too. So
okay.
My number 2 pick would be the 2009 Iowa Michigan State 7-6.
There you go.
We were at that game as well. Great game. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to say. I'm lying. That was a very boring game. If you really like defense, that was your game. But if you wanted any sort of spruce of offense, that was not your game. But we did just enough, and the calls got made for us. I mean, if I can recall, Michigan State dropped a potential interception that would have ended that. And I think it was because the guy either pushed off of us or he fell out of bounds picking it off. But either way, they didn't get it. And getting to see their fan base just walk out of that stadium dejected was great.
Yeah. That's the season, too, that we had the Sports Illustrated jinx. We were 9-0. We were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. What happened the next week? We lose our quarterback at Northwestern getting sacked in the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, that wasn't the next week. You had we beat Indiana the next week, and then we got beat by Northwestern.
Yeah, I think we were 10-0. Yeah, I was at that game.
Okay.
I took a girlfriend to that game, the Iowa-Indiana game, and I was telling Dean this. Even though we got down big, I never really thought Iowa was going to lose that game. It was just kind of like it's Indiana. Like, we're going to come back and win.
Mm-hmm. It was a magical season. We started out 9-0, get on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And I'm just looking at this, guys. We did, after we beat Indiana, that's when we were on the cover, and then we lost to Northwestern.
Yeah.
I mean, and we had a 21-7 lead on Northwestern, didn't we, at that time?
No, 10-0.
10-0, okay.
Yeah, because when Stanzi got hurt, he fumbled the ball, made it 10-7. Northwestern got on it. And then we brought in James Vandenberg, and he hadn't played all year, and it looked like it. Yeah. And he couldn't generate any offense. He got us to the 35 or 40-yard line of Northwestern, and that's as close as we got to the end zone. And they got another touchdown and a field goal, I believe. Didn't they beat us 17-10 that year?
Yeah, and we still were going out to Ohio State, though, the following week to play for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, and James Vandenberg played the game of his life.
If Trey Strauss, and I understand he was from Ohio, and it was a big thing because he had a lot of family there, but when Vandenberg hit him right in the chest with that pass, Iowa could have been up 7-0 right off the bat against them.
Yeah.
Trey Strauss, if I recall, I don't think he had one catch in that game, and it was where he was from. Like they said he had so much family there, and he just couldn't perform on the big stage when we needed it. Yeah. But there's a lot of factors that go into that game. If you remember, having all the momentum we had, and I believe a timeout left in the fourth quarter, Kirk decided to run the ball on the road, get it to overtime, and then when questioned after the game said he would do the same thing 10 out of 10 times. And it's like, you had all the momentum, and you had a guy that we could have kicked a field goal. All we needed, I think, was 15 yards. I mean, we pissed away an opportunity.
It's like he just didn't have enough confidence in his offense to get another first down, or a little more.
I mean, DJK, it's pretty well known Kirk was not a fan of him, but he was a stud in that game. I mean, he's what brought Iowa back. He had a great reception for a touchdown, and then he ran that kickoff back and put us right back in the hunt.
Yeah.
And then the last game I've got is 2002, my first time ever visiting the Big House. Their homecoming. Iowa just pretty much kicking the shit out of Michigan at Michigan.
34-9.
And the remembrance for me of that game was their fans getting up in the fourth quarter and walking by myself and the four friends I was with saying, represent us well in the Rose Bowl that year. Granted, we didn't go, but they knew. That game was just we killed them that game.
Yeah. Jermel Lewis.
Lloyd Carr looked so dejected on that sideline.
Yeah.
Hey, this second, guys. You guys that are watching online, you can go ahead and post your favorite games too in the comment section, and we'll go ahead and put it up on the board there for everybody to see. Don't be bashful. Okay. All right. Jerry, you have any other games that you want to talk about?
No, I think you guys pretty well nailed them. I was going to say the 7 got 6, but he already got to it. That everybody remembers where they were at with that one, and I'm trying to think through some of the Hayden Fry games. because we didn't do the Hayden Fry games, and I only went back as far as the 99 season. But I guess some of the Fry games, when they beat Nebraska, were pretty early on in his career. And then when they turn around and beat UCLA right after that. So it's like two teams right in a row. It's like Iowa, whoa, hey, what's going on here? You're not supposed to be doing this.
My parents talk about that Iowa-Nebraska game, and they said they were waiting because our parking spot used to be, our parking lot was on Melrose, right? If you go on that road and say you take a left, that's where we parked. Anyway, we were waiting to get in there, or they were, and an Iowa-Nebraska fan just got out of their cars right there in the street and just duked it out like right there. I mean, there was just so much tension.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, Iowa's not supposed to be beaten on Nebraska. That's just not. You just don't do that. And now we're to the point where they just don't do it to us.
Yeah. 1981 is the year that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
First game of the season, we beat Nebraska 10-7. We lose to Iowa State 23-12. Beat UCLA 20-7.
Yeah.
And that started out to be kind of a magical year, except losing to Iowa State.
Wow. So it was 2002 till we lost to Iowa State. That's one of the games that if I had to go back and redo, that would be it. How can you blow a 24-7 halftime lead?
Yeah. Well, didn't Brad Banks fumble the ball twice, driving the ball in Iowa State territory or something?
It was not a fumble though, Dean.
Right.
His arm was moving forward. And
I remember. Fumble. Was that the Seneca Wallace? He had that year. He went crazy on Iowa at that game at the end.
They got up to number 11 that year. Iowa State did.
Didn't they even beat Oklahoma that year, or did they lose to Oklahoma at the end?
I'd
have to look that up.
I think
they stuck in 81 or 2000.
I think they lost to Oklahoma, and that might have been their first Big 12 loss.
Okay. By the way, the 81 game was Kirk's first game as an assistant at Iowa.
Couldn't start out any better than that.
Yeah. Kelvin, he didn't say it here, but he actually talked to Barry Alvarez and Kirk Ferentz the night before at a Friday night football game that they were attending, and he just told them to make sure they beat Nebraska. And I think he said, Barry said, we will. I think, Kelvin, did I get that story right? And so, yeah.
Kind of wish that we still kind of had that swagger, confidence, and arrogance. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when you play competitive football.
Well, maybe after the offensive coordinator that we just had is gone, maybe we could catch that back again.
A little swagger.
Yeah.
The question remains, though, will Kirk allow him to do it?
He's paying him the big money to do it, so you better let him do it.
I can't say it's going to happen just because all we have to look on is the past. And and what worries me the most, as Dean very well knows, is doesn't believe in points and wide receivers. But if Iowa does have a magical run this year and we beat teams like Northwestern, Minnesota, UCLA by 3 and 4, they're just going to FSU us. They're going to put somebody with another loss over us because we don't have the style points.
Right.
And until this new generation or this older generation comes to grips with, you got to win in style. You got to have top 100 on a team and not care about that coach across the other way. Just let the boys play.
Yeah. Well, I believe it's more critical than ever now to have style points. When you get down to, let's say we got 4 or 5 Big Ten teams with 1 to 2 losses each, you got to choose which ones are going and which ones are not.
I thought about this. If I was 11-1 and their only loss is to Ohio State, I think they're in the playoff. I don't think, even if you only beat people 7-6.
I think it depends on how much we lose to Ohio State.
10-2, it comes down to style points.
I think you got to keep in mind, if we go out to Ohio State and we lose by 35,
35 might not be bad.
I mean, if they're beating everybody 63-0,
right?
It wouldn't be.
But I not with Iowa's defense do I see a 35-point loss. Now maybe if the offense continues to give the ball up in the 20-yard line and let Ohio State just walk in, then I guess
That should be a trivia question. Did Iowa lead or not lead that game in 2022 at one point during that game?
They did.
And we did. We won.
Yes.
We led 7-3.
Yep.
And it didn't last long. And that
it
was
was
because of our defense.
It was a fumble recovery. Was that Jack Campbell or Seth Benson? Somebody.
Yeah, it was
hit
Benson,
him,
I believe.
And hit him, and then he ran. Not only did he knock the ball out of his hands, but he had the forethought to pick it up and run into the end zone. Yeah.
Dean and I have talked about this a while back, going back to like the records. Correct us if we have this wrong, but
Joe Evans, okay.
Your first five or the four, right? And then you have the 4 conference winners. Then you have that the Troy or whoever it could be this year, Central Florida. You'll have them. So then that's 5.
And then 7 at large.
7 at large, and you got to think that they're going to take at least 3 out of the SEC or 2.
Probably.
You figure the Big Ten's going to get, let's just say to keep it on the stats, 2. So now we're at 9, and then there's 3 spots left, and you figure, well, somebody from the Big 12, their second runner-up probably is going to go. And I told Dean, I think it comes down to we're going to, unless we go 11-1, we're going to be in that discussion where it's going to be us and a bunch of other teams vying for 2 spots in the end.
You may very well be.
And that's why, we need to score, and we need to score at will. Do not take the foot off the gas this year.
Well,
it'd be nice, wouldn't it? Be nice to see Iowa score more than 20 points.
It would be.
I think it was you, Jerry, that said it on your podcast. Sometimes it's nice to be able just to kick back and watch Iowa and know that the game's already determined.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting there and wondering, oh God, can we hold this 7-point lead? Can we hold this 3-point lead?
Yeah. I said that as I'd rather have a kill game than a thrill game. Just every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
It just seems like most of our games are thrill games anymore.
Yeah. The old ticker's not as good as it used to be.
I know.
I did say to Dean, though, I do think that Iowa does stand a chance against Ohio State.
Yeah.
I really do.
When you have,
if we can get into halftime, either up 3 or down 3 or even 7, we're hanging around still, and I think we're in it. But if we get down 14-21, I don't think so.
I agree with you, and I think anytime Iowa's got a defense as strong as they do, that they're always probably going to be in the game, at least in the first half. And it does depend, like I said earlier, it does depend a lot on how Iowa treats the football. If Iowa likes to give it away, especially deep in their own end zone or in their own end, then it's going to be hard for the defense to hold anybody back. But if you can play that, punt it down to the 20, let them get 10 yards, 15 yards, they punt it back to us and just play the field position game, Iowa's got a chance in every game they play this year.
It says here we just landed a 5-star kicker.
Great.
Defense, too, they've got payback on their mind.
Yeah.
People questioned Iowa's defense after that game. How could a defense supposedly so good have been? It's like you need to watch the game. When Iowa's out there for 47 minutes of defense and Iowa's offense is giving Ohio State the ball at the 15-7 yard line of Iowa, it's like, what do you expect them to do?
Right.
I believe Iowa actually held up till that point. They held Ohio State to their lowest point total that year going into halftime.
Who's got the dog?
That's my little golden retriever.
Oh.
When you got Petrus and Padilla, there wasn't a whole lot of hope.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, so guys, I think we've pretty much got this out as far as we could.
Okay.
This might be a good place to wrap it up. And so I appreciate both of you coming on here, helping me out with memories, because I could have done this by myself, but we'd have been done in 15 minutes.
Glad to be a part of it.
I appreciate you wanting to come on. That really helps. Thank you, South Bend, for your contributions. And by the way, you look good in that beard, because the picture you sent me one time, you weren't wearing a beard.
Well, it's like I said, it's just so gray now. I mean, And then I got to keep my sides on my hair cut short because that's gray. It's just this mustache that still is dark. It's like I'm a
you're talking to two guys that are a little bit older than you, so.
Yeah, I got gray in mine too. Yeah.
I had gray on mine since I was probably in my 30s, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends that are Norwegian too, though, same thing, like beards and gray. It just must be either that or we just pack up too much stress on ourselves.
Okay. Mr. Hink would like to know if you're the same South Bend from Corey Brada's show.
I am, and I still don't like Tony Perkins. I'm not a fan of, and I'm still not a fan of John Budmeyer.
All right. On that note, we're going to call it good. Thanks, T. Hink, for commenting tonight. We appreciate your contribution to the show, and watch the rest of the show that you missed. Go back and watch it. It's a good show. All right, guys. Thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate you. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.